Okay, so let's start with group one. What did you guys come up with?
So we are the geeks, right? So as we are the geeks, we are saying Darth Vader is back in town. Okay, so we are doomed. Screaming. Because we were talking about open standards, right? Lack of open standards because the companies are developing the standards, but they are doing it for their own good. So we see that the community or the IETF, IEEE or other standard bodies cannot ensure the or force the open standards. So the companies are using their own standards. We don't see any positive effects on standardization by concentration. Really, what we are thinking is we are doomed, but we also thought about possible solutions, if there are any. The first one is educating. We need to educate the community. We need to educate everyone. And we need to ensure there is open standards for all. And we have to say, may the force be with you. So we have to fight with the Dark Vader. We need community support, but that's also coming with the education. So we need to educate the community, and we need to say that we need to convince that there is something to fight, worth fighting for, to make a change. So we need to ensure the visibility. We need to ensure that these open standards are needed. So this is also linked with the education and others. And knowledge. So what we are always thinking about standards are, what the standards are for are, we need to speak in the same language. So open standards for all.
Thank you very much. Group two. We have a presenter from group two.
Okay. We had a question. Does the current trend of new traffic patterns, what had been referred to as flattening internet topology, constitute a concern or an opportunity for the long-term viability of the open internet? We discussed this question, and we agreed that we don't see it yet as an issue because there are a lot of cloud providers that are connected to public internet exchange points, and there's a lot of spreading of those cloud providers around the different regions and the different internet exchanges. So we think that even if they build their own infrastructure between their I don't know, data centers or points of presence, this not affects how users can they reach, because connecting locally to internet exchanges, this is actually public network, is not a private network. So the access to their services is made publicly, in our opinion. And we think we should sustain the development of internet exchange points, especially in regions which they are not present, and so the cloud providers should connect them locally in those regions. Okay.
Thank you very much. Do we have group three? 3 and 4. Group 3 and 4. Okay, we have an improvised presentation. Yeah. So we'll start with question 3. Right?
This group had a lot of disagreements. So we're basically two teams in a way. We discussed the difference of, is it the characteristics of the service that is bringing the monopoly, or is it the business model, monetizing on data? And in the end, we agreed on that it can be two different types of businesses. Like the different types of characteristics can bring the monopoly depending on the service. We continued our disagreements into the existence of natural monopolies or not, where half of the table said there are no such thing, and the other half said, but this is proof that there is such a thing. And also continued the disagreement on whether the internet economy can be seen as a natural economy or traditional economy, and if we can see parallels or comparisons. So through all of these very interesting discussions, we at least agreed on 4 action points on how we can tackle these growing companies that in a way are taking monopoly of the market. First point being antitrust legislation. Just as we do in traditional economy, we need to legislate when companies are getting too big and are taking over the market. Point 2, public administration are also buyers and users of these services, and I say we because I'm also public. They need to show the way. They need to show that through the official procurement processes. Also, make sure that companies that aren't monopoly have a chance in taking part of the market. And point 3, also as Group 1 said, even though it's a different subject, educating the masses. Education is key, and we need to raise awareness, and there are 2 parallel lines. And the last point was incentives, and incentives can be different. Sometimes it could be economical, but sometimes economic incentives aren't enough for these companies to, I don't know, this was more your point, to take responsibility. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we have Group 5.
So we're a group about regulation with no regulators. So we agreed very easily that we should go beyond regulation. Beyond was the motto of the group. And we started about saying that we should be careful to define the terms. And it was mentioned that one of the problems of the report was that there were many terms assumed that people understand, like invariance and others. So we should really make very clear what means, for example, breaking the internet. And then regarding regulation, we try to define different layers. One is geographic, from national to European to supranational, and arguing that all these layers of regulation should be linked and influencing each other when the influence can be positive. For example, the EU can influence national regulators to take correct decisions. Then we discuss a lot about that it's not only about regulation and legislation, but it's also about education. Education was also a very key topic in our group. And we asked what to do really about it, because everybody puts education as a bullet, but then how do we do it? And it was an example of how we can bring together different actors and sources. And we discussed about, for example, funding schemes that ISOC does today independently from the European funding schemes, and how this can be consolidated and influence each other, and showcase examples of funding that is sustainable and does not rely only on short-term results as always. And because education is a very complex and long-term problem, the keyword critical thinking was mentioned, and toolkits and training the trainers. All these are well understood, but the question is how we do them. And regarding ISOC role, we discussed about many people being in key expert groups, but having also an ISOC hat that often it's not used. So to create some sort of awareness, we called it some sort of ISOC overlay along different expert groups and bodies that would be helpful to be networked, but it's very difficult, and ISOC could serve as a glue, as a connecting element along these different groups. So this goes into the idea of global projects and linking and networking and going beyond. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And big thank you to all of you for participating in this exercise. I hope that it was interesting. I hope it was also indicating how challenging these topics are while we're wrestling, and what we really, really need a sort of collective brains on this. I just wanted to finish sort of with connecting back to a little bit what was mentioned in the last presentation about other related projects that we also have at the Internet Society that connects back a little bit to the efforts that we're doing this year. So someone mentioned the Internet invariance, for example. And the Internet invariance, for those of you who are not familiar with the Internet invariance, was a concept that was described by the former CITO of the Internet Society back in 2012. And Leslie Daigle was her name. And she wrote them to sort of try to juxtaposition how does the Internet differ from a regular telecommunications network, the regular telephone system, and try to describe what really matters about the Internet. And that is something that we're sort of bringing back into thinking as we go forward. How do we communicate to both policymakers and the broader public what really matters about the Internet? Because if we're trying to defend something, we should try to be better at describing what it is that we're trying to defend. I think that's a really important comment from that group, and that's something that we're wrestling with and trying to refine, and hopefully you will hear more about it in a couple of months. The project is ongoing. But that was everything from me. If you have any more questions to me about this project or other things, I'm going to be here until tomorrow, or you can reach me on email. We also encourage our chapters to bring these type of discussions back to the chapters themselves. So if you thought this was useful, interesting, we really encourage you to organize sessions with your own chapters. We created a template that kind of gives you a little bit of an outline of how you could do that. But we really encourage that, and we also encourage there to have the chapters also report back to what were you discussing, what were your findings, suggestions for the project. So I can send out that information afterwards as well. But that is really key to how we're approaching this project, to make use of a bigger brain than the little brain that we have within just ISOC staff. And we really want to encourage others to participate and help spread the word about this and contribute to thinking. But thank you very much for today, and I will hand over to Frederick.
Set of applause to Carl. So you got some materials to bring back to Geneva, I believe. This is just gorgeous. I love the Dark Brothers back. So you worked so well